Okay, well, Liz Truss, the UK's new prime minister, has it right. Tax cuts and tight money. That's the way to economic success. Get us out of this terrible stagflation. Joining us now is Tyler Goodspeed, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. Tomas Philipson, another former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. We have way too many chairmen and not enough Indians, but that's another segment. Gentlemen, welcome back. That was a joke. So, Tomas, I think Liz Truss has it completely right. And by the way, I want to include the monetary component. The Bank of England, belatedly, just like our Fed, right? They're raising rates. They're cutting back on money. So that's going to boost the currency at some point. It hasn't happened yet, but it will. And meanwhile, underneath that, you get your new lower tax rates and deregulation, provide incentives for economic growth. I mean, I think that's right. Now, I want to get your take on it real quick. I mean, here we have a British, actually, you're not a British citizen anymore, are you, Tyler? You're an American citizen. Is that right?
I've always been an American citizen.
I never was a British citizen.
Just thought I'd put that in there. But Tomas, what do you think of Liz Truss? That's the first question. And will it succeed? I mean, let me just add, I'm not going to name names, but the usual liberal business networks are all saying it's a terrible idea, it's a terrible idea, it's going to cause deficits and the stock market's crashing because of Liz Truss. I think that's a lot of hooey. But what do you think, Tomas Philipson?
I think it's 2 years before she's up for re-election. So she's gonna have to hurry up with 2 years of supply side economics, which is sort of what she's implementing. I think it's starting to smell there, like when we were in the White House, because she's gonna face rising rates, which we face too, with this kind of agenda. So it's kind of looking like it. When we were there, she didn't go after their sacred cow, which is a big part of their spending, which is NHS, the National Health Service, which is almost like you can't even talk about cutting it over there. I was actually at a talk at Oxford a couple of weeks ago, and I was almost thrown out of the room when I mentioned that it was basically a monopoly health plan with mandatory premiums in terms of taxes. And they just love that thing, and they keep spending on it.
Yeah, but you know, Tomas, you got to get the growth before you can get the root canal. I mean, you're probably right in the long run. Tyler, I mean, look, again, this is a Reagan, Laffer, Robert Mundell, the Nobel Prize winner. Remember the old cry? I mean, you may not remember. I was living it during those days when I served. Basically, tax cuts and tight money was the oversimplified way of saying it. The tighter money cuts back on inflation, and the tax cuts provides incentives for economic growth, Tyler. That combination gets you out of stagflation and gets you on back to prosperity. And then my last thought, Tyler, you know, these business networks, I mean, look, revenues will come pouring in because of growth. And as Art Laffer teaches through the Laffer curve, tax avoidance would go down at the lower tax rates. So you should be able to cover the deficits, maybe not the first year, but within a couple years. That was our experience, wasn't it, with the Trump tax cuts?
It was, Larry, and isn't it interesting that after 25 years, there's actually a conservative government in Westminster? Look, there are investment zones that are going to be free from planning restrictions,
yes.
And you can fully expense investment in capital, in plant and equipment there. They're keeping the capital allowance for new equipment investment. They are keeping the corporate tax rate at 19% instead of raising it to 25%. I'd like to claim a little bit of credit for that because I put out a paper over there during a pivotal moment in the leadership campaign. I think that ending the 5% surtax on incomes over $150,000 and allowing markets to set banker compensation, that's going to be really important for the city of London as they try to keep talent in London and stay competitive. And then Britain also has a labor shortage like we do in the United States. So some of those marginal personal income tax rate cuts are going to help. And then finally, fracking and expanded leasing for new drilling in the North Sea. I think that this is a recipe for growth, and it's long overdue.
Now, Tomas, the question is, can our Republican cavalry, and they put out the commitment to America, it's more broad brush, but that's the way these things have to be in an election. Can they emulate that? I mean, it's what we need here. And I'm concerned that what we have here is tight money, very tight money, and the dollar is rising, which I might like under different circumstances. But we also could be on the throes of a longer-term monetary contraction, Tomas, which will deepen the recession and deepen the bear market in stocks. I mean, that worries me. There's no pain-free way, policy way, to deal with sticky inflation. They're just going to tighten. The Fed's going to tighten this all down into oblivion.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Fed report that came out this week, you basically see it's unbelievable what they're thinking within the Fed. They think we're going to have increased growth of about 1.2 next year, but we're going to do it with less labor apparently because unemployment is going to go up and labor participation is not going to move much. So implicitly, they're talking about some huge boom in productivity, which is the lowest since 1947. So I think, you know, there are bureaucrats out there running the markets essentially with very little understanding. It's kind of sad because the bureaucrats have such power over the markets that when good news comes into the markets, prices go down. And when bad news comes into the market, prices go up because of offsetting price controls by the Fed. So I think, I mean, it's very worrisome how the Fed is operating with the limited knowledge they had that is revealed by that report this week.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point. When good news becomes bad news, you know you got a problem. You're exactly right. We should welcome good news. Yeah. Tyler, you know, Janet Yellen yesterday gives a talk. She praised the Inflation Reduction Act. Really? Really? I mean, not even Jay Powell now thinks the IRA is going to cut inflation. She endorsed the Green New Deal agenda. She said that's the key to solving everything. So did John Kerry, although he's kind of a dummy, isn't he? But then she said, listen to this, Tyler. Janet Yellen said the unfinished business, whatever that means, unfinished business, they have to raise taxes on the wealthy. They have to raise taxes on corporations. Now, as we head into this recession, what a terrific idea. Raise taxes on successful people, which, by the way, will hit the middle class the most, it always does, and raise taxes on businesses, which will also hit the middle class because they're the wage earners. I mean, that's Janet Yellen, okay? Maybe we should export Janet Yellen. Well, I don't want to send her to Britain. I mean, I want to send her to some other kind of place. But what do you think of that? Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, giving terrific advice? Really?
It's certainly not the advice that I would be giving. Look, especially in the context of a rising cost of capital because of the Fed's actions, necessary actions. I mean, they have to do it. In that context of a rising cost of capital, I think the last thing we should be doing is further raising the cost of capital by increasing tax rates on business investment and increasing taxes on small and medium-sized businesses who happen to be pass-through entities and therefore face the highest marginal personal income tax rates. I think it's a bad idea.
I mean, it's just, I think it's worse than bad. I think it's kind of nutty. I mean, I didn't understand her. She's a very smart lady, credentialed. She's married to a Nobel Prize winner. But I guess she's just towing the progressive line. I guess that's what that's all about. But unfortunately, that's what those guys, that's what they'll do unless the GOP cavalry takes over. Anyway, I'm quite concerned here at home, but good for Liz Truss. Tyler, so you've always been an American citizen. You have a British accent, but you're really an American.
I'm American through and through. My better half is British and Australian and American now.
All right. Tyler Mathis, just kidding. I love the two of them. Tyler Mathisen and Tomas Philipson.